one of the things I teach as it relates to thought leadership are these 10 archetypes that I have uncovered. I've found it's been a really powerful tool, along with some of the other tests you might take, like DISC or Working Genius, to help you build a business that is one that you love and love showing up
Yeah.
in every day. Because I think there's nothing worse than trying to step into the generous act of guiding other people and helping solve their problems when it just becomes frustrating because no one's listening because I was told to dance on TikTok and no one's watching.
Welcome to Growing a Fruitful Brand. Today's guest is Macy Robison, and I've had the privilege of knowing Macy for a long time through the Story Brand community. But in May, I had the opportunity to learn from her. And if I'm really honest, I had kind of one of those moments where you get invited to a friend's concert or a friend's play where you're like, I'm going to be supportive no matter what happens here. But I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to get out of it, because I saw that Macy was talking about building your IP, your intellectual property. And this is something I've struggled with for a long time. And so I had this hesitation going into this, again, wanting to be really supportive of my friend here, but also just going, yeah, I don't know if I'm actually going to get anything out of this. What I did not anticipate was that this was going to change my entire year. This happened in May, and I have been thinking about it literally every day since Macy's workshop in Nashville in May. So I'm so excited to have Macy on the podcast here. She is, her business is called Own Your Impact, and it teaches people how to become thought leaders in a way that fits them. And that is so huge, so important, because that's where I personally have struggled for a long time. A lot of that has been that you hear these things like, oh, you should create a course, or you need to make short form videos on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. You need to start a YouTube channel. You get all this advice, and most of it just feels like another way for the internet to ignore you. So I'm very excited to have Macy here. Macy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. And it's
So
fun to hear about your reaction to the workshop. And it was really encouraging to me because this is something that's been rattling around in my head for years. And that was, I think, the second time I'd shared that content in a workshop form. And it was just really empowering and encouraging for me to hear that it resonated with you.
So many times when, like I said, you go see a friend's play or a concert, or whatever, and you just expect to be just like supportive, and it's really great that you're doing your thing. But with yours, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm a Macy fan now. And I feel like it's almost always the opposite experience. Like I've had people that I've hung out with socially that I go, yeah, I actually respect them less now. And with you, I gained such an amazing respect for the work that you do through this one workshop. But tell me, if you would, what trips up people like me? Why, we hear all these things, and I create a lot of content, but we hear these things that are like, you need to create a course, you need to create these YouTube channels or other things. Why does that not work for people like me?
I think the biggest reason it doesn't work is instead of thinking about how that tactic, I look at that as those are really tactic-based strategies, like starting a course, starting a YouTube channel. All of those things work for the people that they work for, and that's amazing. But we tend to become almost evangelists for the things that work for us without even thinking about why they work. We all love sharing things that work for us. I think that's one of the great things that makes us generous humans. The problem is when we're on the other side of that sharing, we don't always take the time to think about whether that's the right strategy for us personally. So it's almost like a copy paste instead of really thinking about, man, okay, I could start a course. What kind of course is right for my personal wiring, my personal way of expressing myself? Or I mean, I probably should be on LinkedIn, but there are lots of different ways to post on LinkedIn. So just because someone is creating, you know, videos where they're sitting in their car, like Jefferson Fisher does on Instagram, does that mean that's going to work for me? I don't know. I need to think about it. And I think the gap is that we don't take the time to think about what actually makes us authentic, what makes us unique in the way that we express ourselves, in the way that we invite people into transformation so that the tactics actually match.
I mean, 100%. And that's, sort of the tactical side. But then I think the other problem that I experience is, people like Amy Porterfield, who's wonderful, will say, hey, okay, you got to come up with your course. And I'll sit down and go, okay, I know a lot of things, but I learned story brand from Don. I, learned this from Tim Ferriss. I learned this from whoever. And so I don't really feel like am I bringing anything unique to the table? And so they're like, sit down and write your IP. That's part of why I was just kind of nervous about your workshop, was that I go, cool, I'm just going to have a writer's block for an hour. So it's like, should I do emails instead? And so the fact that you were able to help me unlock that, can you kind of talk through like why do smart, capable, creative people get into this question and go, okay, I can accept that maybe building on different platforms in different ways, that's part of the answer to the tactical problem.
Mm-hmm.
But even from the knowledge problem, from the IP problem, why do we run into that problem?
That's a great question. And I actually did start thinking about that from a music standpoint. I think that we have this deep belief, if we have something that we need to share, that it needs to be completely original from scratch. No one has ever thought this thing before. This is revolutionary, and I'm going to burst on the scene and everyone's going to listen. And that just isn't the case. There's really no original thought under the sun. A lot of it is just remixing. And so as I thought about that for a while, my husband really loves U2. We've seen them perform several times. It's really fun to hear an original band perform original material in person. But then there are really great people who cover their songs as well. And as I thought about that, I was like, my favorite cover artist of all time is Kelly Clarkson. She's got an amazing voice. She rose to fame as basically singing cover songs on American Idol. People fell in love with her, not because necessarily the song she was singing. She had the knowledge of her own voice, the skill about who she was, the skill of her own voice and control of her own voice, and brought her own personality and point of view to all of those songs. And it made us fall in love with her. Then when she finishes the show, she's singing originals now, but I think it's really awesome on her tours, on her talk show. She still sings those cover songs, has called them Kellyoke, and it's a big part of who she is and how she shows up as a brand. So as I thought about that, I was like, man, there are so many people out there. And I used to talk about this when I was a personal brand strategist with Brand Builders Group, that you're the person, you're the magic, you're the one expressing the idea. And when someone is tuned into you and who you are, you could be saying the exact same thing as someone else, but people pay attention to what they're tuned into, to who they're tuned into. So showing up with your unique voice, even if you're quoting Donald Miller, people are going to resonate with you sometimes and want to hear that information from you. So knowing that principle is true, that we don't have to be completely original. We just can share from our authentic selves. That gives us permission to just share the things that are helpful to the people that we want to help. And I think that's really a great thing to give ourselves permission around as we're trying to grow, because as we start to use our voice and as we start to share even someone else's material in a way that resonates with us, that helps our own voices, our own thought leadership get stronger and stronger. We might come up with our own original approach, our own original idea and IP, but we won't do anything if we don't start. So I think that Kelly Clarkson principle, bringing your authentic self, even if you're bringing it to someone else's material, obviously cite it and quote it and give credit to the folks who you're quoting. But man, I just feel like that's a great place to start. And I've seen that be true in the StoryBrand community over the years. There've been plenty of people who have taken that certification, who have taken other certifications, other principles, other ideas, started to teach them, gotten great results for their clients, for the people they want to serve, and have then continued to grow from there.
I love this Kellyoke principle. That really was a big unlock for me. One of the, not everybody in our audience will be old enough to remember this, but I mean, Whitney Houston's most famous song is a cover.
It is.
Dolly Parton wrote "I Will Always Love You."
Yep.
But something I think it's important to think about there is that Dolly Parton didn't sing it the way that Whitney did, and so Dolly's version is good. Whitney's version is great. And so you don't necessarily have to even be the one who wrote the song. Yeah, you have to be the one that sing the song the way that other people need to hear it. And
Absolutely.
and so I think that really resonated with me, and that was a great place to start. Is just giving myself permission to be, not have to come up with an idea as great as StoryBrand
Right.
or or EOS or anything else.
Mhm.
Just say what things have I picked for what reason. I didn't have to invent the tomato to make a great soup,
I
kind of
love
thing.
that.
So with that in mind, one of the things that I hear you saying is that survivorship bias comes into the way that people advise us, and we know this across the business world, right? That
Right.
that when people do something and it works, then they say, well, this is the way that you're supposed to do it. I love that Mark Cuban talks about. He says that any billionaire who says that they could start over with $1 million and make it back to being a billionaire is lying. He says that there's so much luck for him that was involved in his journey that he doesn't think that even he could get back to being a billionaire, even starting with more money than a lot of us have.
Right.
So I think that it's really important to recognize that in this, is that the people who are telling us this is the way to do it are telling a way that will work for some people.
Mhm.
And it's a good way, and they're not wrong for saying it. But we're also not wrong for feeling like that doesn't fit. With that in mind, I'd love for you to talk to us about, what are these pathways then? You call them archetypes. How do we then begin to like shift our mindset to finding things that do fit us?
What you just said is really key there, that it's not that their approach that they're sharing is wrong or right. It's what's right for them. And the more and more I get into this work, the more I'm convinced that anything that's being shared as like a universal best practice is probably someone's archetype that has worked for them, and that's what they're sharing. Like that's the medicine they want to share with everybody else to
Yeah.
help them. And that's a generous thing to do. That's a kind thing to do, but it's on us to make sure we examine whether it works for us. So one of the things I teach as it relates to thought leadership are these 10 archetypes that I have uncovered. Some people have hobbies. I like to reverse engineer thought leadership platforms. And I, want to look at like, okay, here's Mel Robbins. What does she do? How does she create revenue? How does she connect with people? And I started just kind of tracking different types of business models that aligned with folks who had chosen to guide other people through the information they know, the knowledge that they have, the research that they've done, and kind of see where there were commonalities. I love to look for patterns, and I found some, but as I kept digging into it, I was like, okay, there are some patterns here that have to do with how people express themselves and how they help guide people through transformation. So, for example, one of my archetypes is a resonant orator. That is someone who is a verbal processor, who is probably a speaker because that's the thing that is easiest for them to do. My primary archetype, which is a transformational guide, someone who works well with folks one on one, more as a teacher, potentially a coach, who can walk people through this transformation in a personalized way, kind of like Mr. Miyagi did with Daniel in The Karate Kid, like giving him what he needed when he needed it, giving him different ideas, different ways to go. That's my primary archetype. And I've always found it tricky to write courses or to do something that's more structured for my own business. I've worked with Amy Porterfield. I've purchased everything she's sold, I think. In fact, I several years ago had a chance to go to a live pre-taped version of her digital course academy. She was combining a bunch of courses, did a live in-person event where people were going to walk away at the end of the year with a finished course. And I got halfway through the first day and couldn't finish mine for a lot of the
Mm,
reasons you described. Like I felt like I was borrowing other people's stuff. I didn't really have anything to say. I wasn't expressing my true value through this structured course. So I just sat down and started coaching people through the blocks they were having in their courses. And what I should have realized is that's my most natural way to show up, to help, to express how I think, how I see
yeah.
things, and how I guide transformation. So,
Yeah.
with these 10, I found it's really powerful for my clients, for people who have listened to my podcast, to take this quiz and give themselves permission to, I guess, own that part of themselves, how they express
Yeah.
themselves, because then it becomes not a bug, but a feature. For me, knowing that I'm
Yeah.
a transformational guide has been really helpful. Resonant orator is my secondary one on my own quiz when I take it myself. And that's had a lot of influence in how I show up as a business owner. I have a podcast because I'm most aligned with speaking. I give live workshops because that gives people the opportunity to experience working with me before they hire me. And that's made a huge difference in my confidence and ability to show up. So, that was a long answer, but I found it's been a really powerful tool, along with some of the other tests you might take, like DISC or Working Genius, to help you build a business that is one that you love and love showing up
Yeah.
in every day. Because I think there's nothing worse than trying to step into the generous act of guiding other people and helping solve their problems when it just becomes frustrating because no one's listening, because I was told to dance on TikTok and no one's watching.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the big things that you did for me was give me permission. You didn't phrase it this way, but I've been thinking a lot about since the workshop of it's okay to be rich and not famous.
Yeah.
To be successful without having to build a huge platform and like you said, the TikTok dances and everything. It's okay to not be all that entertaining. It's okay to do it the way that is right for you. Can you talk a little bit about I think the problem that a lot of us still experience, kind of the writer's block problem that a lot of us still experience with that is um, you feel like, okay, so I'm a resonant orator. I'm not, but I'm a resonant orator, or I'm a writer, and I've got to do a New York Times bestseller, or I've got to do a TED Talk level talk, just coming out of the gate here. Then, like, if this is my thing, then I got to do it amazingly. How do people kind of grow into this strength, or how do they use this strength to explore what they're supposed to be talking about?
Oh, that's a great question. As far as their content, you mean, like what they
Yeah. Yep.
okay. What I usually do, I talk with clients about um there are really 4 E's of your core resonance. One of them is what we've been talking about, the archetypes. That's how you express yourself. Another one of the E's is your essence, and that's really just how you're wired. It's the difference between knowing I'm a soprano or an alto. And one of them isn't right, one of them isn't wrong. It just is. So I use assessments like Working Genius to help kind of excavate some of that, so that we're not building something that they want to, or teaching something that doesn't align with who they are. The third E is their experiences. I love StoryBrand, obviously, but one of the things I love most about it is this idea of a hero's journey. I think thought leaders that step into this role are really embodying the role of a guide. And all guides have had a hero's journey that they've walked through. They've learned things, they've
Mm,
gained experience, they've gained expertise and empathy and authority that positions them in that role to turn around and help others. So, in many ways, you'll hear people say the mess that you have gone through becomes your message. And every thought
mm,
leader I've worked with, that has been the case. The thing that they're teaching is the thing that their 10 years ago self most needed. Um, and it also becomes the medicine that we sell other people in the form of courses, in the form of content. And I think that's why sometimes the tactics that other people are pushing on us feel so urgent, because it worked for them and they know it will work for you. Um, I think, though, you have to keep taking your own medicine in order to really show up in a resonant fashion. And that is the fourth E, which is embodying all of these things about yourself. So as that relates to what people should teach, I usually start with what has been the experience, what have been the things that you've learned that inform how you want to show up and how you want to teach. Like you said,
yeah.
some people want to be Taylor Swift famous and want to fill stadiums. That's fine. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made to get you there. It's a different amplification system than if I'm, a singer-songwriter sitting with my guitar inside the Bluebird Cafe, singing for the people that are there. So, um, I think it's, that knowing what we want to teach a lot of it comes from the experience of who we are and who we want to help, and then giving ourselves permission to show up and start being ourselves.
I don't, in order to be, somewhat professional, I did not gush at the beginning of this, at the beginning of this episode. But folks, you have to listen to Macy's podcast. I literally listen to most episodes twice because
Thank you.
it is so transformational for me. And I'll tell you, I have personally not advised some of our audience correctly over the years because I know, I can watch the trends. I know that social video outperforms, social posts and all those types of things. And so I've been much more subject to the, to what's happening, what's working right now,
Mhm.
because we all like to do what works. But the thing that I had not connected with was that you had this great zoom out on communicating, and you said, hey, yeah, sure, those things work if you're that type of person. But if you sit down in front of a camera by yourself and dread it every time, you're going to give up on it. It's not going to get you to the point where your IP is clear, where your voice is clear. So do the thing that works and that is working in different rooms, and that helps you find the path. That has been utterly transformational for me. I don't even have a good question to ask you here at the end of that, just to say, like, wow, I mean, this has been so huge for me.
I really appreciate hearing that. Thank you. I think the thing that I was kind of reflecting on just listening to you even say that is the energy piece of it, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're excited about something, you can keep going. And even when it feels like no one is listening, and that's, I think, important to do, especially in this social media landscape where we're measuring whether we mean to or not. We call them vanity metrics, but we do notice if
Yeah.
that's where people are paying attention. But I love what you said about sharing it with actual people so that you can see their response. I think that that is something that we've lost in this age
Yeah.
of social media from a tactical standpoint. One of my favorite things um, to do is go to my voice lessons. I've been taking voice lessons with my daughter over the past few months. And it's been a really great learning experience for me. And as I'm trying to, I haven't sung for several years and I'm trying to get my voice back, um, and seeing my voice teacher when something clicks correctly and she hears it and there is resonance, she sits up and it's really exciting to see her response to what I did so I can memorize it and do it again. And in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, that's what you're describing with the writing that you're doing. Like you've got to get those things in front of actual humans because I think we have that social media, the algorithm may or may not be showing the things that we're putting out there to the right people. Anyway, like put it out there for sure, especially if it's aligned with who you are and what you want to be teaching. But sometimes I think that runaway success, if you talk to anybody who's really gone viral for something, doesn't necessarily bring the right type of customers to their
Yeah.
doorstep or the right audience members.
But when you're talking about building an audience, one activity that we did is we went through, because of our workshop with you. So Ben wasn't there. I came home, told him everything that I learned, told him what I was excited about, and said, we got to start, working on our marketing for this. So then you have the question to go, oh, okay, well, who is our audience? We went through every customer that we've had, crossed off the ones that were not great experiences for
Mm.
several reasons, whether they couldn't pay very well or whether because they were tough to work with or whatever. Circled the ones that were amazing to work with. Of course, there were a lot of them. One thing that we found was that those customers that were great to work with over the last 10, 13 years, there were about 9-ish people total that connected us to those people.
Wow.
And so when we decided that that's our audience,
Mm.
that's who we're writing for 9 people. What do they need to hear? And that question that I told you before, why is design so expensive? One thing that I realized is that not a single one of them had to be convinced of the value of design. They came to us because they valued design.
Right.
And so instead of writing a book that says, here's why you should value design, I'm working on content that's just about the value of design so that other people who already believe this go, yes, that's what I've been trying to tell people this whole time. I'd like to work with these folks. It absolutely changed my mind and my approach of how to do this. And again, I could not be more thankful for the things that you've unlocked this year. at some point need to actually pay you for your expertise because you've done so much. But I know how much farther I can go now that I've been kind of like unlocked down this path. I could not move fast enough right now to get this stuff out and to put it out in the world. One of the things for me, one of the reasons that I co-own a design company without being a designer is because I really believe that people's attention matters. And that's because I really believe that every person's life matters.
Right.
And that when you waste their attention, you waste their life. And so that's a big why for me. But then it's sort of like, okay, that's a very lofty thing. How does something like that turn into a business? Where does somebody go when they're building their IP? How does somebody actually, make a living off of this? Should they make a living off of it? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Oh, that's such a great question. First of all, I love the way you're so deliberately building it into your business, and thank you for saying all those nice things. It's just really exciting to hear that it's been useful.
Free testimonials for you.
I
use them all.
It's always fun to share something and have people resonate with it. I mean, I think I use that word resonance because it's one of the few words I know, and it's a music word when we just can't think of any other way to describe the way we feel. So I really appreciate that. But to the question, we all want to have an impact. That's why my podcast is called Own Your Impact. I think we all deeply are meaning-making machines. We are driven by purpose. We really, when we're at our best, want to help other people, want to be that guide. And in order to really make an impact, you do need revenue. If that is something, I think it just depends. Actually, let me back up a little bit. So if I want to just show up and sing at church or sing in my community theater and share my voice that way, that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. I don't necessarily have to make money. So, to that end, if there's something you want to share, if there's something you want to teach, you don't have to monetize it. You can make an impact in people's lives by just being willing to show up as who you are and share the thing that you have to share. But if you decide that you want to broaden your reach and broaden your impact, you do need to make a deliberate decision to step into monetization somehow, to commercialize your offering. I think that the easiest quote unquote way to do that is to provide services, to do something around coaching or teaching. There are a handful of things you can do in terms of business models for revenue. You can get a book deal. You can self-publish a book. You can speak and have people pay you to show up on stages. You can start a podcast like this and choose to monetize it with ads and affiliates, or you can choose to advertise your own things and create valuable content so people will come hire you for the services you actually provide. You need to remember you're not building what Julie Chanel from Funnel Gorgeous calls a faceless brand that takes a lot of money and investment and that's going to make an IPO someday. You're building a brand that's either centered around you, or you're doing what you and Ben are doing, where you each have your personal brands that are alongside a business that you're trying to build, and it's really just a decision to be made.
Can you talk to us about how when you have a business like Bob Goff or like us, where it's the thing that you do, it pays for your kids, dentist work and all that kind of stuff. Right. You have that. And so you need to keep that going. But then you also have a personal, either archetype or passion. They can almost feel a little bit silly. It can almost feel a little extraneous to the work of your life. And so how do you kind of make peace between those things? Are they in conflict? This is something that you wrote me a very great email about my own kind of archetype. Can you just talk to that a little bit of like, what do you do when it feels like maybe your work and your personal ambition are in conflict?
I think I would encourage people to step back and see whether they really are in conflict or not. I think that it was funny when I first had my husband take Working Genius. He looked at all 6 of the results and in the order, and he said, "I feel like I'm good at all of these things." And I said, "You are. That's not what we're measuring. We're measuring what gives you the most joy and satisfaction." And I think that there are always ways to bring more of who you are to what you're doing during the day.
Yeah.
There are ways, if you look at the way you're wired, to do things in the way that you love to do them. And it will grow. I've just found it again and again, not only in my own trying to live this out. It gets kind of meta sometimes to be teaching these things and realize that I need to live them too. And I feel like I'm in this like very strange meta loop of my own content. But the more I try to embody what I'm good at and show up and help people and teach the things I'm meant to teach in the way that I'm wired to teach them, the more opportunities that I have to help. And that just, it's just really been a gift for me to be here today and chat with you and hear the effect that this has had on you. And that continues to happen and grow the more I choose to show up as who I am.
Well, as I have said throughout this episode here, you should be listening to Macy. Like, if you are not listening to her podcast, it's called Own Your Impact. I'm not joking when I say that I listen to almost every episode twice, even the ones that are not my particular archetype. I learn a lot through each one, especially because Macy references other archetypes when she's talking about that, sometimes to help you know the difference between what, especially when you get into like the transformational guide and the facilitator. Those are so close to each other sometimes that it's really helpful to like listen to how are these different, which one is more me or not. So definitely listen to Macy's podcast, but then also Macy, how can people begin this journey of figuring out their archetype and going down that road?
Oh, I love that. Thanks for asking. So there is a quiz that you can take. It's free. Takes about maybe 10 minutes tops. If you go to Macy Robison, Robison is how you spell my last name. MACY is first name. So macyrobison.com/quiz. There's a quiz you can take. Just answer it, answer the questions. Sometimes you might be trying to choose between two. Answer the one that feels like the most who you are. It will give you a primary archetype result, which for myself, like I said, was transformational guide. For Raj, is wisdom writer. But then there are some additional, it's a weighted quiz. So there are other archetypes that gives a little bit of an explanation as you go down the results page. I'm finding more and more in my client work that those weighted second, third, fourth archetypes matter as well and really personalize who you are. So I do have several free workshops between now and the end of 2025 that if you go to macyrobison.com/workshop, can learn a little bit about how those apply to sales, to marketing, to your content, to some of these situations where we talked about at the start, people are saying, this is the one right way to do this thing. This is the one right way to run a sales call. I have my own way of running sales calls. And I realized, after realizing it's based on my archetype, when I do the best job, offering what I have to offer to my clients. So just to help you apply not only the primary archetype, but some of the secondary archetypes, those workshops are a great way to learn a little bit more about that and get you started.
Macy, thank you so much, not only for being on here, but also for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I cannot express enough to folks how her work has changed my year. You don't hear me talk about this kind of thing very often. I don't read a lot of business books. I don't listen to a lot of this kind of content because there are a lot of things where it's just the normal principles of business that we should just buckle down and master. This is an actual new voice and a new way of thinking about how we should be marketing and putting our content out there in this day and age. And I have not heard anybody talk like this in a long, long time, if ever. So go listen to Macy, go take that quiz, and you'll be better for it.
Thanks for joining us today on Growing a Fruitful Brand. If you found today's show helpful, don't forget to subscribe and consider sharing it with someone who might also enjoy it.
If you'd like to work with Fruitful on a branding, website, or messaging project of your own, you can always reach out on our website, fruitful.design.
But until next time, don't forget to grow something good.